Hello, Infinite Masters. Welcome to the Infinite Mastery Podcast, where we bring you high-performing world-class leaders and experts to help you master your self-esteem and master your self-worth. Today, we have Richard Reyes. He is the founder of the Plus Me Project, which is a nonprofit based out of Southern California, which helps students realize the importance of their own personal stories and why they really matter. Richard is a great personal friend of mine. I'm really excited to have him on today. And today, what I want to do is, I've already know a lot about Richard in terms of his own personal story and kind of we've been working together for 2 years and working very closely together. And today I want to kind of flip the script, and we started talking about, what's something that we haven't really discussed about a lot. And one thing I almost completely forgot about because I'm so used to it now is that Richard is gay, and that's something that we don't talk a lot about, and it's not really mentioned a lot in his story. Today, I want to dig a little bit deeper and really understand what were the challenges Richard had growing up with his self-esteem and also being gay and not being able to share that for a big portion of his life. So, Richard Reyes, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself and anything that I've missed in the intro.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. You hit it pretty solid. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and I always knew I was gay, and it was something that I really struggled with. And as I think back on my life, there were different moments throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, and even now to this day that affect my self-esteem and my self-worth. And it's been a process, but I've definitely have come a long way. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about it because, like you said, it's not something I highlight often. It's definitely a part of me and it's who I am, but it's not something that I go into much detail with a lot of people. So I'm excited to have the opportunity today to share a little more with you and everyone who's watching.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a super powerful conversation because there's a lot of people out there who are struggling in terms on many different aspects. One, coming out to their family, friends, people that they care about. And also other people might know someone who is going through that struggle. And I think this interview is going to help a lot with those people who are challenging because you've been through it a lot. And I know you're like 10 years, it's been 10 years since you came out. So I think there's a lot of information that you have. And on top of that, you are running your own nonprofit at the same time. So, you're doing a lot of big things in the world. And I think a lot of people are going to want to know all those details. Let's see. Before we get into kind of the challenges you had growing up, I had a question, and it's skipping my mind right now. So I'm going to pass that along. Hopefully it comes back up because it was a really good question, and we get to have that. But let's go ahead and dive into, tell us a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up. What would you say was the biggest challenge around, self-esteem and also just being gay, but not being able to express that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge issue. I mean, ever since I can remember, it was something that I struggled with. My family, I would say my parents were raised in households that were just homophobic to an extent. And that then affected how they raised us. And I don't think my parents raised me with blatant homophobia, but it definitely was not an accepted thing to be. So I knew that, and I realized that growing up, and I knew I was different. Thinking about in elementary school, it's just I always hung out with the girls, and it wasn't because I liked them, right? It was just because that's who I felt more connected with. And obviously not liking girls in the way that the other boys liked girls. So it was something that I struggled with, and I always also felt like growing up, I didn't know any gay men in my life. I knew none. And that was something that I struggled with because there wasn't that person that I could look up to or reach out to or ask any questions to. And I also felt like anytime I saw the media, TV or radio or music, just hearing different things, it always seemed to be the same feminized gay man. And I couldn't really identify with that. So I felt like on one end, I couldn't identify with what I saw or heard in the media. And I also couldn't ask any questions to anyone. And I couldn't talk about it with my family. So I kind of suppressed it for a long, long time and tried to pretend to be someone I wasn't for many years of my life. And it was a struggle. It affected my self-esteem and my self-confidence. And I began living a life that wasn't my true self. And that, of course, affected how I viewed myself and affected the relationships that I created in my life. And there were some tough moments, definitely going through middle school and high school. Yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine how many challenges you went through on an ongoing basis. I imagine it was constantly on your mind. And can you walk us through maybe one or two specific examples and kind of help us to kind of paint us a picture, relive a certain moment where you had a challenge, and what was that like?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the ones that are highlighted most are in high school, just because they're more recent than the younger ones. And it was a time where I started coming out, but I wasn't really out at the time. Some two examples I can think of: my senior year in high school. I was dating a guy at the time, but no one really knew except for a few of my close friends. And as the year went by, people just slowly started to find out. And it was specifically right before prom. I actually was prom king at my high school, North Hollywood High School, and the school seemed to find out a few days before prom. And I remember when I was crowned prom king and they put the crown on my head and they gave me that sash, and as I walked down the stairs to get to where all the students were, I just heard faggot coming from one of the corners, and it was just almost chanted. And that just totally just affected me and hurt me so much to think that now that these kids know that, they're now viewing me completely differently. Another example is one of my very good friends in high school. We were tight, and then the moment he found out, it was just like everything changed. Everything changed. And that's something that had affected me so much because it happened consistently as I came out right out of high school. Some of my family members, some of my friends, it's just the way they interacted with me became a completely different situation because they knew and found out that I was gay. And it was so hard for me to process because I didn't change. I wasn't a different person, but just because they knew that one thing, it then affected how they were going to act around me, what they were going to say to me. You know, it became like just this game almost. And it was hard to deal with because I was always on eggshells, and I felt like even when people knew, I still couldn't be myself because they were going to act certain ways around me. And it was tough.
Wow. So how just for people who don't understand what it's like being gay, how did people act differently towards you? Like what was the, one moment they're treating you like, let's say you're quote unquote normal.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they know something different about you and they're treating you differently.
Yeah.
What was that shift? And like, what kind of vibe did you feel? And what was that like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was definitely just the conversations that we would always have just wouldn't be the same anymore. You can tell they were more distant, or they didn't want to engage for as long into the conversations, or they just slowly stopped coming around the groups that I'd be around. Or with some of my family members, it was just like the opposite, where it was just not going to be discussed at all. They just found out, they know, but I'm not going to talk to Richard about it. I'm not going to address it. I'm not going to tell him I accept you, or I'm here for you, or if you ever need someone. It was just like, we're not going to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what it was for a very, very long time. And, when you're going through all of these emotions, then you have life just happening on top of just your sexuality, which is just one aspect of you. You want those people to reach out to. And when you feel like you can't, you bottle it all up inside, which is at least something I did. And I felt like I had to do everything on my own, which I think helped build a side of me that's allowed me to be successful and has allowed me to grow this nonprofit that I run, because I felt like I've had to do a lot on my own and internally push myself. But it hurt a lot because I could never open up or express myself or just be myself around a lot of my friends and family members. Because many of them just didn't accept me, or it took them a long time to accept me. And on the other hand, I have some of my closest best friends who accepted me the moment they found out. And they mean so much to me because they were always 100%. They never changed. And when you see someone who never changes versus a lot of people who change, you know who your real friends are. And they're my besties,
Yeah. Right on, man. So I'm just curious. I mean, I come from I would say a background slash a family that's very judgmental, prejudice, and I think probably even for myself when I was younger, if I heard the word gay or if I found out someone was gay, I would probably treat them differently myself back in the day,
Mhm.
and maybe I still do today. Let's see, what is from your perspective, how do you treat other people who have these filters and these judgments around gay people?
Oh, how do I treat the people who have those
Yeah,
filters? I mean, it's hard. It's hard to be around it, and it's hard to just live with them, whoever those people may be, or even
yeah,
want to engage with them because you can, even today as a 27-year-old man, to an extent, I still have to walk on eggshells because of some of the stuff I'm holding on to from my past, where I feel like whenever someone finds out I'm gay, maybe they're going to just completely shift. And it still happens in different ways. I can come out, like I'm at a networking event as a professional and I'm talking about my nonprofit, and maybe if they find out I'm gay through a conversation or they ask who I'm married to and it comes out, it's like, either you can tell there's a shift in their mannerisms, or they feel like they have to overly let them know that they're accepting of me. So it's like, oh, you're gay. Oh, that's fantastic. And it's like you wouldn't do that if a straight person just told you that they're married to a woman. So why are you doing that with me to make me feel extra comfortable? Now it's uncomfortable. And it's just something, people react in different ways. And I know, I feel like people don't know how to react sometimes. But the fact that it has to always cause a reaction,
yeah.
70% of the time, either a negative or an extremely positive one, it's something I have to constantly deal with everywhere I go.
Yeah. What that's funny that you mentioned that. What advice would you give for let's just say a straight person or someone, it doesn't even have to be straight, just someone who is not who does react to it?
Yeah. I mean, try not to react to it. Like, try to just continue the conversation as if everything maintained the same. Like, this new information is not this life-changing information. Like, I guess unless you were a woman trying to hit on a man and you find out he's gay, okay, fine, it's not going to work out for you. But if it's just a conversation with friends and you're in a group, just like continue the conversation. And if you are, for whatever reason, just completely uncomfortable, then leave.
It's funny that you mentioned it because I'm walking through my own progression, my own personal progression of how I responded to gay people. I remember when I first responded, I had that like, "Oh, you're gay? Oh, okay." For me, I was that one guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's a process. It
Yeah.
takes time for us to let go of our judgments of how our labels that we put on people and shift. So, I mean, this conversation is going both ways now. We're talking to people who are gay and trying to get advice there, but also people who are not gay and trying to gain perspective, and maybe straight people trying to talk to gay people and be like, hey, it's sometimes it's a challenge for us too. Like we don't know how to react.
Yeah.
Not that this is a we versus me, us versus them type of thing. I love you, brother. Let's see. So, my goodness. So one thing I didn't mention, we talked about the Plus Me Project, the nonprofit that you're running. Let's see, you got a lot of huge things going on with your nonprofit right now. Me being a part of it, I know we've been to over 100 different high schools, middle schools, colleges as well in the Southern California, mostly Los Angeles area. And let's see, over approaching 30,000 students reached, and just going to classrooms, sharing stories. You presented your presentation over what, 300, 400 times at least? 500?
Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah. So for you personally, we talked we talked a little bit about your past, and now I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the present moment. And I want to know, how does being gay like play into your every single day life, 10 years after you've come out, and what does that look like? Because you're running this nonprofit, and you're going to have opportunities where, as much as you want to share it, there's still going to be judgments. So you got to kind of pull that back and hold that back. What does that look like for you right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's a battle I face every single day. And, I'm blessed to be in Los Angeles because it's a very accepting place. And, 10 years since I've graduated high school, it's changed drastically in the 10 years. And it's great to see. But at the same time, there's always going to be those concerns. And I think it stems with what I went through growing up. And it's hard to fully let that go and just move on owning it. So I don't say that I'm gay in any of my presentations. And it's something I've been very conscious of. And my narrative talks about me being the first in my family to get a bachelor's and master's degree. And I talk about just the academic and the health and the other struggles I went through. And there were a lot of other struggles that I went through aside from me being gay. And it feels a solid 45-minute narrative. So sure, I can include it. And yes, it's an aspect of me, but my philosophy has been, it hasn't defined me. And there are so many other moments that had nothing to do with my sexuality that affected me and got me to and through college that I choose to highlight, But now that I'm married and I have a husband, it's something that comes up, whether students ask me if I'm married or they see my wedding ring or I'm in public at networking events, as I said earlier, and the question pops up, it's always, are you owning it or are you not? And I would say sometimes I don't own it. I'm very honest. I don't, because I'm either uncomfortable in the situation or I don't feel like that child or that person needs to know. But when I'm out now specifically with the adults, I say the honest truth. And sometimes I bring my husband along with me and it's like I'm able to introduce him, but it's something that I still worry and I still wonder, just for the sake of, as running a nonprofit, like my example in high school, when people turn their back on me, I have this slight fear where I might meet a potential funder and I tell them my story and they love the Plus Me project and they want to invest, but the moment they find out I'm gay, that might change their whole view. And yeah, maybe if someone views that way, we don't want even them to support us, and there's no reason for that. But it's just something that I struggle with, and I know that has a lot to do with my past that I've tried to process, and I'm still dealing with it, but I've come a long way with it. But it's still something where I'm always in that mindset of, yeah, if they find out, what is that going to do? So I think go confidently is kind of the message behind the way I'm trying to live. And it's my everyday reminder to go confidently. And I'm not the most confident individual, but I do my best to kind of own and lead by example, to be that role model for others. And, it's tough though. It's tough.
I want to go back real quick. And one thing that we didn't touch upon yet in this interview was kind of, what was it like going through that period of you coming out to your family, your friends, and the people that you love? I imagine there's a lot of things going on, a lot of buildup. Kind of walk us through that. What did that look like? Let's say weeks before, days before, hours before, it could months before, years before.
Yeah.
Decided.
I mean, I came out right after I graduated high school. It was brewing. Like I said, I was in a relationship most of my senior year in high school, and that relationship extended for 2 years after high school. So he was always around, and it's like, is he the friend or is he more? And it kind of got to the point where I think people started picking up on it finally. And basically my mom outed me in terms of just asking me over the phone one day, is he your boyfriend? And I kind of was silent. And that silence was her approval to it is. And it was tough. It was really tough for her to process that. She struggled for many, many, many months. My dad as well. He took it in a different way, where in the beginning, it seemed like he was totally cool with it. But then I think as time passed, he started to process it. And it's like, oh, my only son, the only male on my entire side of the family is gay. And it's, I'm sure it hurt and they needed time. Again, there's no other gay males in our family. So it was one of those things to process. Getting married was also a big step. That happened more recently, about just over a year ago. But even getting married was a process to, is the family going to attend? Are they going to be by my side? Are they going to be supportive? And luckily they all were there, and it was great to see, but I know, even though the support is there. Some of them still struggle with it, you know? So it's accepting that for what it is, and being able to just kind of move forward. And, you know, everyone knows I'm a good person, and that's what matters most, I think. So yeah, the coming out process was not easy, but I know I'm blessed that I've heard some horror coming out stories, you know, where just horrible things happen to young boys and girls, men and women. And I'm blessed that nothing crazily extreme happened, you know, but even to the point of the fact that something like this has to happen, where people are struggling just to accept their child for who they are. And there's a lot of extreme emotions and anger and sadness and frustration. It's just like, even that is, I think, too much. Like, why does that even need to happen for someone to just come out and say who they are, you know? So it's going to take time for everyone, but I think when you're that example and when you're able to show people, you know, and when people realize there are gay people that you know of and they're no different in many ways than you, it starts to open the perspective and minds of individuals to say, okay, you know what? I can support this. I can be on this side of the issue.
There are a lot of people who, as much as they want to open up about themselves, they don't feel like they're in the right environment. You know, they have parents who maybe are more on a traditional background where they don't agree with that. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone who is in that period wanting to come out, and maybe what advice would you give to someone whose parents are more on the side of not very accepting?
Yeah, I mean, it's still super common, and a lot of kids struggle with that. And I think, you know, it's really important for young individuals to just find their community that they feel safe with, that they can start opening up to. And I think once you find that community where you can at least let it out and you can be yourself in a space, it helps you kind of process things in a different way. And it helps you realize and think in a more clearer mind as to the action steps you can take to get closer to that larger overall picture of telling the family or telling the individuals that are homophobic or that don't think they can accept you. There are a lot of resources on school sites. There are a lot of resources in the communities, you know, where you can go to find people like you that are similar, that are going through the same exact thing that you're going through. And if you don't know it's out there, it's hard to process and realize. But when you find that community that either is the same as you or just fully accepts you for who you are, it helps. So, you know, find that community is my best advice, and really rely on them and open up as much as you can.
Where do you think someone who is looking for a community could find a community if they are, let's say, in middle school, high school, college, and even recent grads as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's looking online for the resources that are around. I mean, I know it also depends on where you are. You know, being in Los Angeles, it's everywhere. Almost every high school has a Gay Straight Alliance network, or they have a community LGBTQ center. And I know there are cities throughout the United States and of course throughout the world that don't have that, and it's not easily accessible. So it's kind of finding the communities online and finding the individuals that you can connect with in a positive way, right? And you can really express yourself and not get taken advantage of, or not go into a route that's going to lead you into one where you're not proud of yourself, or you're just kind of forcing yourself into. Like, there are communities and spaces, hotlines that you can call to talk to people. So I think there are a lot of things out there that we might not always realize, and just be willing to reach out and think about the resources that are there. Do the research, I think, is the best advice I can give.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you very much for that one.
Yeah.
Before, you mentioned that we talked about how in your presentations, when you talk about your story and you share it with hundreds and thousands of people at this point, you mentioned you don't mention the you being gay, because in a way that creates this really big focus on a lot of people. And you also mentioned that you don't feel like being gay defines you. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, what do you think does define you?
Yeah, that's a solid question. I think I'm defined by my perseverance and my resiliency. And I think it's something that has been a living trait that I've possessed that has pushed me towards my passion and my degrees and my work. And I think that's what defines me. I'm someone who is resilient and is not going to stop and is going to reach goal after goal after goal that I set, and I'm going to be a very positive individual in it. And I think that's what defines me. And yes, I'm gay, and yes, I have a husband, and yes, I have a life, but that's not everything. It's just one small part, and I'm so much more than that. So, I don't know if it'll ever come out in my presentations. It's not in my plan to really share, because like you said, it becomes a integral part, and then that's kind of all that's remembered. And not that I would be opposed to that at all. I wouldn't. But I just think without that, there are so many more students that are going to resonate and are not going to potentially leave with anything that they couldn't leave with, and some people might say, well, that's not Richard being authentic. And I would disagree. I think it's totally authentically being myself, just not needing to reveal that part of my life.
Right on. One thing, I love being able to hear your perspective because, we have people who are very gay pride, very open about it, and really like a really, really strong advocate of like, it's embrace being gay, let it be acceptable. And for yourself, it's not that you're against it. It's just you don't define yourself. Gay doesn't define who you are. And I think it's so powerful that you are creating this almost like this like side conversation that not many people are having right now, which is, why can't I just be a human being? And, being gay is just one part of me. That doesn't need to be that bold focus, rainbow unicorn, all that kind of stuff. But you're just you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think the people who are, they're doing it for so many valid reasons. They've
Absolutely.
dealt with things that other people haven't gone through. And, when you look at just the inequalities that are there, you have to kind of fight for what's right. So I would say there is an aspect of me that is going to potential rallies and is fighting for gay rights and totally being an advocate for it. But that's not everything, and I choose to highlight it in certain situations, and also not in others. I'm never against it. I'm never discriminatory. I'm never, on the opposite side of that spectrum, but I'm not always gonna kind of be in that central space of it throughout my day-to-day life.
Right on. I got two more main questions for you. The first one is, given where you are right now, 10 years, you came out 10 years ago and you've gone through a lot of experiences. What can people who are still in the early stages of like trying to come out and all that kind of stuff expect later down the line after they come out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you can expect to find this sense of peace with yourself. You can find this sense of comfort and confidence where you're going to start living out your life and not even question or not even think about it, because it becomes who you are in a way where you're openly able to live it in front of other people. So definitely in my network, with my family, with my closest friends, it is everyday life. And it's not even a question or thought process, the fact that I'm gay and I'm married. Yes, sometimes in public, when I'm around people that I don't know, it becomes that, but you become so comfortable and confident in your own skin that you're able to just truly relax and not wonder and not be scared and not be concerned. And you're at peace. And that's the most beautiful thing. And it'll get there. It takes time, but it'll totally get there.
Right on. Before we wrap up with our final, with your parting thoughts, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing today. I think it was such a cool experience to hear this almost backstory part of it. A part of it that we don't discuss. I don't hear you talk about in your presentations, but it's real. This is real stuff. And sometimes when we have, there's so many things we could be talking about as a person. Like for me, my focus is self-esteem. That's what people know me as. Mm-hmm. But there are so many other aspects of me that people don't necessarily hear. Some people hear about how my dad has dementia. A lot of people know that, but not everyone. It's just there's different messages for different audiences. Mm-hmm. So thank you very much for sharing your story. Real quick, before we wrap it up, because I want to leave you with the opportunity to give your parting thoughts.
Okay.
For people, if you want to connect with Richard, I think the best way to connect with him is by checking out theplusmeproject.org. And that is his nonprofit website. You'll see my pretty face on there as I'm a presenter. And you get to learn a lot more about, what Richard does in terms of creating opportunities for students to really own their story and really understand why it's so important that they care about their stories at such a young age, because they're going through a lot. And oftentimes students don't feel like their stories really matter. And it's such a powerful nonprofit. And you can read up more on Richard. Again, theplusmeproject.org. You're on social media. They could follow you there. What's the best way someone can get a hold of you if they have more questions?
Yeah, you can connect with me if you fill out a form on that website. I get all of them. You can connect with us on social media as well. I kind of run all the social media pages and the website. So feel free to submit a form there, and we can email, we can connect via phone or via Skype, and have some further conversations for sure.
Right on. All right. I want to leave this. Your parting thoughts. I want to ask you, I guess, another two questions. First one is, what advice would you give for someone who is struggling with self-esteem in general, and maybe also self-esteem and also being gay and not having completely owned that?
Yeah. I think the overall advice for self-esteem is you have to discover who you are first and really, truly believe that. Because I think sometimes when we're trying to gain self-esteem, but we're also trying to be someone else, it's difficult because you're kind of on two roller coasters at the same time. So when you're able to really know who you are, and you do that just by experiencing things, I discovered tennis after high school. It is my biggest passion ever, and I love it more than almost anything. And that's how my husband and I met, and that is the bond that keeps us so strong. And if I didn't have tennis in my life right now, I don't know where I would be, because that's such an integral part of me. But had I not experienced and gotten out there and tried new things, I wouldn't have discovered it. So I think once you find those things that make you truly happy and you have so much fun doing them and you know them, that's when you can slowly build up your self-esteem, because you're living your true, authentic, fun, loving self. And that's kind of the advice I would give to no matter whether you're gay or straight or bi or anywhere in between the spectrum nowadays. Just kind of own who you are and go confidently. Once you have that, own it and be it. And you don't have to out yourself every time you go somewhere, just be yourself. And if it comes up in conversation, own it. I think it's important to stay away from the lies, because a lot of gay individuals lie for a large part of their life, to please others. But once you come into yourself, you got to own it. That's what I would say, parting words. But honestly, Richard, I want to thank you for this opportunity, because as we both said, it's not something I talk about. It's not something I get into. And to be able to put this out online, really as the first interview or anything of me kind of owning this space, it's exciting. So I'm excited for the people to watch, my family and friends to watch, and they're probably going to learn things that they probably didn't even know from watching this as well. So thanks again.
That's amazing. That's great. Great answer. That was phenomenal. Any other parting words on top of that? I think you really killed. I'm just killing the outro, the end of this.
No, it's good. It's good. Perfect. It was fun. Yeah.
Richard Reyes, thank you so much. I love you, brother.
Love you too.
And again, theplusmeproject.org to learn more about what he does. Love you again, man. Thank you everyone for watching. Take care. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this week's episode of the Infinite Mastery Podcast. For more show notes and other information of this week's episode, as well as previous week's episode, check out infinitemastery.org. Also, we have a private Facebook group where we have regular conversations. You can hit me up there at facebook.com/groups/infinitemastery. Thank you so much, and see you next week.